Hey, what's up? This is Seth Green, and you are listening to Somewhere in Vegas with Mark, and I am so hot, I would desperately like a glass of water. Please, please, give me some water.
This is Cindy Preston, and I'm with Mark on Somewhere in Vegas.
Hi, this is Melissa Peterman from CMT's The Singing Bee and the television show Reba. And I have to tell you, I just have to get it off my chest, I love Somewhere in Vegas with Mark.
Hi there. This is Faith Roscoe from General Hospital. You're listening to Mark on Somewhere in Vegas. And you better watch out. We know how to find you if you're not listening.
Hi, this is Shannon Egan from Whippet, and I love Somewhere in Vegas with Mark.
Hey, this is Lee Allen Baker with Somewhere in Vegas, talking with Mark with a Q.
This is Courtney Cronin. You're listening to Somewhere in Vegas with your host, Mark, and I would make sure to listen every week because he's a sure bet.
Hey, this is the Money Man, Eddie Money. I got 2 tickets to Paradise, and it's, you know what? It's Somewhere in Vegas. And what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Hi, this is Crystal Gale, and I love Somewhere in Vegas with Mark.
Hi, this is Terry Nunn from Berlin, and you're listening to Mark Somewhere in Vegas.
Hi, this is Miracle Laurie from Joss Whedon's Dollhouse. There are 3 flowers in a vase, and I'm listening to Somewhere in Vegas with Mark.
Hi, this is Erin Hill, and you are listening to Mark on Blog Talk Radio and Somewhere in Vegas. Mark is a great guy.
Hi, this is Sean Pulaski. I'm still trying to figure out Mark Pico's sexuality, but I know you're listening to Somewhere Live in Vegas.
Here you go, Mark. I'm sorry. I thought you were she. I'm sorry. Get out of the tent. Let's get out of here.
Hey, this is Lance and Anna from Free Radio. And Anna?
And you're listening to Somewhere in Vegas.
Yes.
My favorite.
You know, that's usually what happens with me. I go to Vegas and I get lost, and so I end up somewhere in Vegas.
Somewhere in Vegas.
But I just don't know where it is.
Not quite sure.
Yeah, word.
Get ready. It's going to be hot. It's in Vegas. Check out Mark. Be there or be square.
My guest at this time is very, very talented. He has a new self-titled album out. Just came out with a re-release of his song number 4, but now he has a really new single out right now from the album. It's called And Love Is. You guys can check that out as well. And the album, like I said, it's up to Adam from noihis-nomad. You guys can check that out as well. We have Nouhi-nomad himself. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I mean, you know, it's been interesting. We were just talking before you came on that really you're starting to learn a little bit about production and, you know, kind of learn a little bit about that process. I mean, what was it like for you to, first of all, the first time that you were in studio, what was it like for you? And how's it been for you to kind of learn this process of producing?
So I started teaching myself how to produce my sophomore year in college because I started taking songwriting more seriously. And it wasn't fun. I mean, sure, there's all the creative aspect of it where I get to enjoy myself, but I was never able to polish the end product the way I wanted it to be. So I decided to study, you know, mixing and mastering with a professor at Sarah Lawrence College. And when I was finally in the production studio, it was a whole different world, right? The monitor having 30 different faders, the mix board, just the luxury of all the equipment that I didn't have at home really opened my mind, really like blew my mind and opened my eyes to the possibilities that exist.
Yeah, and I was talking to Rochelle Royale some months back about, you know, she's starting to learn Pro Tools. She's starting to learn how to produce off of that as well. And she feels that it's kind of important as an artist to be able to be able to learn that. I mean, there is a you know, first of all, there's been a lot of downtime with a lot of musicians not having the opportunity to perform live. And I think that sometimes it's great to be able to have some of that time to kind of learn something like this. And I mean, what's kind of the biggest lesson that you've learned through this process of kind of going through producing and learning how to edit music?
It's a very, very good question, because as much as I learned something, I always forget something else. When I started producing music, I learned that, you know, you could perfect anything, but I also forgot that human imperfection is what makes music. And then 3 or 4 years later, where I am here, I've learned that you have to learn to let things go and not to overproduce something if you want to keep the musicality, keep the humanity to it.
Yeah, sometimes you put too much into a song, and sometimes a simple gist, maybe a simple piano or a simple guitar will do the trick. So it's, you know, sometimes I worry that, you know, some people want to overproduce a song. So it's great to be able to that you have some kind of restraint in terms of that as well. Coming into a song, what's kind of your process? Do you have an idea of lyrics? Do you kind of have an idea of melody coming in? I mean, kind of tell me how that process kind of works for you.
That for me varies song by song. Number 4, I wrote the lyrics first, and then I realized I wanted to make it, a kind of a Vampire Weekend influenced song. So I listened to Vampire Weekend's music. I figured out the voicings, and then I grabbed the progression, voiced the guitar in a way that would be similar to them, and then made the lyrics fall onto the progression through a very simple melody. But then you have a song like Hiding Home, where I had the progression first, and then I worked around it with lyrics. And then you have a song like Ohio, where I had the melody and I was just playing around on guitar, and then I harmonized the melody and then ended up writing lyrics and the progression afterwards. So it really depends on, I guess, what's going on in my life, how I feel, and what inspires me that day.
Well, besides the song number 4, on this album, I mean, are there any other songs that maybe you had some ideas on like earlier, but never knew exactly what to do with it, and then you finally figured it out?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of songs that I shelved before coming back and finishing. And during that time, during my time when I released the Crash Test EP, which was full of demos, I had some unfinished tunes, and I want to say that "And Love Is" one of them, as well as "Not Quite Sure." Those 2 tunes were in the works and had been on the bench in the workshop for the past couple of years until I finally put them together and then started tackling new songs with a fresh perspective.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your background. You started off with violin, which is very interesting to say the least, and then you picked up piano as well. I mean, did you always seem to have that, kind of that talent for music? I mean, you started at a very young age.
Yes, my mom thankfully made sure I, took music courses as a kid, and I took them for granted. I studied violin until I was 8. I didn't have the best time. The teacher wasn't too friendly, and I always wanted to keep excelling, but he said you have to, perfect it. And over time, as a classical musician, that kind of got hammered into me, which is why I'm the perfectionist I am now. But I've always had an aptitude for music per se, but not always the desire to practice unless it was something that I really enjoyed. And that's why I landed on voice, because I loved singing and I could sing anywhere. I didn't need to be at the instrument. I could quite literally sing on the street. Whether people liked it or not, I could pollute the sidewalk.
Yeah, and I mean, just to have that, the ability to be able to do all that stuff. I mean, I'm a decent singer. I have no dexterity in my hands to be able to play an instrument. So I'm kind of jealous in that aspect of everything. But just having that experience behind you in terms of violin or in piano, and I think you have bass guitar under you as well. I mean, that does help in terms of kind of thinking about a song and kind of layering that song and what you want to put in it and what you don't, I'm assuming.
So violin helped me most when it came to teaching myself, bass and guitar, because it's very standard. The harmony is it's let me rephrase, not the harmony, but the way the instrument functions is very, very similar, right? You have 4 strings, and then on the guitar you have frets, which makes your life easier. On violin you don't, but the harmony is there, right? It's a half step, and then you can figure things out in voice chords. But the one thing that helped me with layering and how to fill up a space was the piano, right? Because when you play a piano, in the left hand, you can have a bass line. In the right hand, you can have a middle voice, or you can have the melody in the middle. And then you can arpeggiate, and you can play ornaments, flourishes on top. And that's why piano, in my opinion, is one of the most versatile instruments, because you can essentially reduce an entire orchestra to just a keyboard, as you've seen many composers do.
About how many instruments do you know how to play?
Okay, so very well, I would say 1, and that's the human voice. But I used to be able to play piano well classically. Now I can accompany myself if need be. And guitar and bass, I can get by in. There's a little bit of Persian percussion, so I can lay down a simple groove. But as far as violin goes, I haven't touched a violin in the past 13, 14 years. So I think I've lost that completely.
Well, I mean, that's always something that it's like riding a bike. You can always come back to it if you ever need it. But just interesting to say the least about everything that you were doing as well. How's it for you in the studio laying down tracks? Is there a certain way that you lay down tracks? Do you lay down the drum track first, or do you have a just a beat track and then you layer on the guitar then? Or tell me a little bit about that process.
Okay, so I'm a singer-songwriter, producer who has done everything out of my bedroom or my dorm room, depending on where I am. So I typically don't go into the studio to track anything, with the exception of maybe Anguise for the rock remix that we'll be releasing in late July. What I usually do is I plug into my DAW and I just DI in on my guitar and I lay the rhythm, and then I lay the lead guitar. Then I go track the bass. While I'm tracking these three instruments, when I've tracked them, I start playing with the mix, finding the color that I want them to be, and then rearranging them as need be, finding different voicings. Then I lay the vocals. And finally, I ship out to a drummer in Australia who's a buddy of mine. And he has a studio. He just lays the grooves. We go back and forth a couple times to make sure they're tasteful enough for me or they get the job done. And then at the end of the day, I get all the stems and I mix them down. Or recently, because I'm just so swamped, I send my stems out to a buddy of mine from high school to mix them down for me.
Well, I mean, it's amazing to have that ability. I mean, it used to be back in the day, you'd have to go into a studio to be able to lay down tracks and to be able to do all that. But nowadays, you can have somebody halfway across the planet be able to give you beats or drum tracks or any kind of instrumentation, as it were, from there as well. So it's very interesting, to say the least, and to have those connections. I mean, that must have been great. I mean, you went to a musical high school too, so you must have those connections.
Yeah, I went to LaGuardia High School in New York City, and it's surprising, right? Because all these kids I went to high school with, and I'd fool around with. I go to the cafeteria and I started just gossiping and starting drama, because I was one of those like arts kids, and all of them are some of them musical theater kids, so they live for the gossip and for the theatrics. I know 4 or 5 years later, one of them is running his own music tech company, another one has a record label, and then 2 or 3 of them have banded together to create like a whole multimedia management company. So it's fascinating seeing all these people who I know as kids growing up to become adults, as I am as well, and seeing them tackle the endeavors of trying to become a musician or becoming a musician or creative in the musical industry.
Have you had the opportunity to play a stage or anything like that in the past couple of years?
So I've been on the stage quite a few times as a classical singer, and I have sung at churches for the holidays. The last time I played in a rock band for a live audience was my sophomore year in college. I was in a Vampire Weekend cover band, right? A lot of Vampire Weekend fan out here. But recently, in March, I was able to actually play a live stream event for the nonprofit that I volunteer for. And that was a lot of fun, although the disconnect from the audience does take away from it a little bit, because I'm just playing to a screen, my sound engineer and the guy behind the camera.
So yeah, it's something that'll be interesting once things open up again. Maybe we'll see kind of how everything is, and how everything kind of goes over as well. Things are starting to open up out here. I think the state had said out here in Vegas that we're going to be opening up by, I think, June 1st is the plan right now. I don't know how it is out there in New York, if everything's kind of going according to plan, but things seem to be going relatively quickly out here. So hopefully you have the opportunity to at least play something.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I plan on busking in the coming months as the weather gets warmer, and that way I can just practice in front of a live audience that doesn't want to see me there, because if I can get them to enjoy the music, then I should have no issue having those who come to see me enjoy the music. But I do hope that I'll be able to be on a stage and play for an audience in the coming months. It would be truly amazing to be back on a stage.
Now, I mean, have you had the opportunity? I mean, obviously the track's out right now. Have you gotten any feedback from the fans? Have you been getting any international feedback, as it were? Interestingly
enough, I think number 4 is charting on the South Africa iTunes charts at number 17, and it's number 1 for world music. And I'm getting some feedback from the fans, and they like the direction it's heading. Some of them want, a little more production. Some of them want a little less production. But at the end of the day, it's my music and it's the way I express myself. So I'll listen to what I think is reasonable. And some people, say, go produce a rap album. That's not something I'm interested in.
Yeah. Well, that's you as an artist as well. But it's glad to hear that, your music's getting out there, internationally. Obviously, hopefully some of the Iranians out there are also listening, having access and being able to listen to some of your music as well. So, maybe they'll be getting some downloads down there too.
Oh yes, for sure. I'm waiting for the rock remix of Anguise to drop, because then I could push that song through the entire Iranians, like the Farsi speaking community in Iran. And then you have Los Angeles, you have them all across the globe. And I'm really hoping to bank on that as a way to give myself another surge irrelevance, perhaps.
Well,